Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
What's going on? You're listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm your host on Mondays and Thursdays, Casey Foreman. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. A lot to talk about today with the NBA season coming to a close. On Sunday? Yeah, it's been almost a week now, but with the NBA season coming to a close, us here at GSMC Basketball, we kind of have to backtrack, look at last season, or kind of look forward, into next season. That is kind of what we kind of have to do now with this season coming to a close. To start today's podcast, I kind of want to backtrack back to Sunday at least and give you guys a reminder. Yes, LA, they are still, the NBA champions. It's only been not even a week, and I feel like it is not being talked about or discussed quite enough. So I want to start today's podcast by talking about it one more time, giving some more praise on those Los Angeles Lakers. Again, LA are still the champs, guys. It's only been not even a week. I then want to pivot and still discuss LeBron James, but in a different sense. I want to talk about him going forward. Does he have a chance to catch Michael Jordan, in 6 championships, in 6 total titles? Can LeBron win 6 rings? That is a thing being talked about right now, with him eclipsing his 4th title, only 2 away from that, heavenly 6th title, right? So only 2 away. I want to discuss that. And then I want to discuss the Los Angeles Clippers, stay in Los Angeles, and then go out west with the Houston Rockets. Both organizations are looking for their next head coach. I want to discuss that, break it down, give you guys my opinion on which coaching job, which position is the better job. And then at the end of the podcast, end of the show today, I want to discuss the Miami Heat. Some top executives in the NBA believe Miami just might be the landing spot for the next high-name, big-name free agent. Miami just might be the next, free agent hotspot, as you will. So a lot to discuss today, despite the NBA season coming to a close. But like I said, let's go ahead and start today's podcast with LA. They are the NBA champions. After a 6-game series with Miami, the Lakers are taking home their 17th NBA title. And again, like I just said, is it just me, or does this feel like one of the least talked about championships in recent history? Last year Kawhi won it. We had a bunch of talk about him. Is he the new, best player in the league after taking down the Golden State dynasty? When Golden State won, we heard, is Kevin Durant the best player in the world now, taking down LeBron James in back-to-back years? Golden State, when they first won, they're the next team to beat going forward. So I feel like with Los Angeles winning this year, we haven't had all of that coverage that we have had in the past, and I don't necessarily know why. Is it because people are upset kind of LeBron won and the Lakers won? They weren't all year. They were not the favorites to win. We know the other team in Los Angeles was. So in my opinion, this year's championship, this year's title does not seem talked about quite enough. And again, that doesn't sit quite fair with me. Let's go ahead and discuss it one more time. All we've heard so far, quite honestly, is comparisons between Michael Jordan and LeBron James. And in my opinion, a little bit disrespectful to LeBron. How would you feel after every accomplishment you make, you get, someone diminishes it by bringing up someone else's accomplishment, somewhat, again, lessening yours in a way. That is what people continue to do with LeBron James, despite him showing us again and again his greatness, his all-time greatness. So again, I'm not gonna even go there today. Compare Michael Jordan and LeBron, a little bit disrespectful to LeBron in my opinion. Let's celebrate what he and Los Angeles did without dragging Michael Jordan's name into it. Okay, let's go ahead and do that on today's podcast. But again, LeBron just won his 4th NBA title, his 4th championship, and just won his 4th NBA Finals MVP. The Lakers dominated the Western Conference, again, despite being said at the beginning of the year they're going to be the 4th or 5th seed. I'll get to it in a second. But they dominate the Western Conference in the postseason. They beat the Portland Trail Blazers, despite Portland having the deadly backcourt in CJ and Dame. LA not having the perimeter defense without Avery Bradley and Rondo at the time. People are saying this is the best 8th seed we've seen in years, and the Lakers really might have trouble getting past this team. However, we see them winning in dominant fashion, winning in just 5 games, 4-1. Then they move on and play the 2 MVPs in Houston, James Harden, Russell Westbrook. We heard, again, the lack of perimeter defense in LA. They lose game 1 in dominant fashion. This is going to be a tough 6-7 game series. I even thought that myself. They then prove all of us wrong again and win in dominant fashion 4 games in a row after dropping game 1, 5 games, gentlemen's sweep against the 2 MVPs. And now, obviously, I'll talk about it later. They fire, or they don't fire. They are parting ways with their head coach. We'll see what other changes are coming in Houston. And then they go on to play the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Final, the team that came back from 3-1 deficits, not one, but twice on the Utah Jazz and on the Los Angeles Clippers, a team we all said all year was the best team all year on paper. We all thought they would simply flip a switch after going up 3-1, having almost a 20-point lead in that Game 5. They then lose 3 games in a row. Denver moves on to the Western Conference Final. Yes, the Clippers did choke. One more time for you guys. Anyway, Denver moves on to the Western Conference Final. We hear, we hear a little bit of rumblings going on. They beat the best team in the league. LA might need to watch out. Jokic is on fire. Murray is on fire. It's a deep roster. Then LA wins in dominant fashion. The gentleman's sweep for the 3rd time in a row, making I'm not quite sure how many titles or finals they've made. Either way, they're in position to win their 17th title, I should say. In my opinion, the dominant fashion that the Lakers, ran through the Western Conference, I think that pretty much erases the narrative that LeBron James can only win in the Eastern Conference, as you will. So I think that pretty much erases that narrative. LeBron obviously has proven he can do it in the best Western Conference. Also, let's backtrack, as we've been doing right since the NBA season's over, but let's backtrack all the way to the beginning of this season to remember ESPN's odds as far as who has the best chances of winning this year's the 2019-2020 NBA championship. If you remember correctly, at the beginning of the season, the Clippers, the Bucks, the Rockets, Denver, Utah, and Philadelphia all had better chances. All were given better chances by those top analysts at ESPN, right? Not throwing any shots or anything, just saying. It's on paper what they thought at the beginning of the year, and it was clearly in right field and left field, however that goes. I'm not a big baseball guy. Either way. Clippers, Bucks, Rockets, Denver, Jazz, Philly, 76ers, all were given better odds to win the finals than LeBron James and Anthony Davis and the Los Angeles Lakers. We heard all year this team is way too top heavy. Okay, yes, it has LeBron James and AD, but what is it after that? We also heard Anthony Davis, a great player, but can he do it in the 4th quarter? Can he do it on the biggest stage possible? He's only won one playoff series so far before this year. Can he do it on the biggest stage possible? That was the question on Anthony Davis. We also heard LeBron James. Yes, we know how great LeBron is, how great LeBron has been. However, going into his 17th season, I should say, people were saying, yeah, he's still good, but come on, 17th year, can he still lead a team to a title? Is he aging? We saw it last year, the washed-up king, as LeBron loves saying now. He loves saying that after he wins. Rightfully so. People were knocking him. I don't want to say he's using it a little bit too much, but either way, washed king. We heard all that last year with LeBron. Also, Frank Vogel, right? Frank Vogel. Who is Frank Vogel? We remember him back in Indiana, taking those Pacers to the Eastern Conference Final, challenging LeBron and the Miami Heat at the time. But who is Frank Vogel? We haven't heard from him since those Indiana days. Didn't he just get fired from the Orlando Magic? Who is Frank Vogel? We also heard, what did Rob Pelinka do with this roster? Like I just said, what is there after LeBron James and Anthony Davis? Who is their established number 3 scoring option, number 3 player? We know all year that was a revolving piece. It was Danny Green, KCP, Kyle Kuzma at time, Dwight Howard at time. So yes, that was a revolving piece. Multiple different players hopped in that role at different times. They didn't have an established number 3. Yes, it was a top-heavy roster. At the time, Frank Vogel was not a proven head coach. Yet myself and a minority in the media, I should say, not a huge part, but a minority in the media, stuck with this Los Angeles Lakers team all season, despite the rumblings we heard of the Clippers, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics at times. So despite all the rumblings, despite everything we heard, me and, again, a minority in the media stuck with Los Angeles. I was going to play a audio clip of me back in months ago, back in the beginning of the summertime. However, some technical difficulties, they're not able to do that. I was simply trying to give you guys a little credibility check for myself. Either way, you guys who have been listening to me here at GSMC know that I have been, riding with the Lakers all season long. They were my pick at the very beginning of the year. So you guys know those of you who've been listening here at GSMC know. However, again, it was a minority of people choosing the Lakers to win the title this year, all the things I just said. However, LeBron James, Anthony Davis both stepped up when it mattered most, which is exactly what me and, again, those people in the media expected them to do. That is also what everyone expected the Los Angeles Clippers to be able to do, showing that it is not an easy task to flip a switch, to turn on a somewhat postseason mode. So we saw the Lakers being capable of doing so. The Clippers not exactly blowing that 3-1 lead, obviously. So LeBron James, Anthony Davis, both of them stepped up when it mattered most. Like I said, again, I want to give another shout out to the Miami Heat and Jimmy Butler. A very impressive postseason run from them. What we saw, I think they dominated. Yeah, they easily dominated the Eastern Conference when, again, I think it's safe to say nobody expected them to do so. Jimmy Butler also is the first player ever who has matched up against LeBron James in an NBA Finals series. He's the first player ever to out-rebound, assist, and score LeBron James in an NBA Finals game. Also, he leads a short list of players to lead their team in every statistical or major statistical category in a playoff series or a finals series. I think joining LeBron James, maybe another player as well. Either way, joining a short list of players to do so. His ranking, his respect as far as my mindset has risen drastically because of what he did in Miami, what he did in the Eastern Conference this year. Props to them. But again, let's stay on the Los Angeles Lakers here. They have not gotten the respect they rightfully deserve, in my opinion. And then on the other hand, the other discussion here is that Finals MVP award. I've discussed it here on the channel before. I definitely believe LeBron James was deserving of the Finals MVP. His 4th Finals MVP in his 17th season. I believe, yes, the second oldest player to do so. I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar waited a little longer to win a title. Either way, Fourth Finals MVP, second oldest to win that award. First player in NBA history, okay? I'll repeat that. First player in NBA history to win a Finals MVP on 3 different franchises, 3 different organizations. LeBron James has won with the Cleveland Cavaliers, Miami Heat, and now the Los Angeles Lakers. So first player ever to do so, literally beats Kawhi Leonard to the punch. If Kawhi and the Clippers won this year, he would have been the first player to do so. However, LeBron James beats him to the punch. He is now the first player, the only player in that category. He has literally won. Okay, when you're looking at his career, he has literally won everywhere he has gone. Okay, and quite frankly, it has had a pretty quick turnaround as far as him getting there and them competing for titles. If you remember, he goes to Miami after not having enough support in Cleveland at first. He goes to Miami, is in the NBA, makes the NBA Finals their first year together, loses, however, but, their second year together. After 2 years, they're NBA champions. Then he goes to the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? He goes to Cleveland, leaves the aging roster in Miami, and within 2 years, they are NBA champions. They come back from 3-1 on the 73-9 Golden State Warriors. Him and the Cleveland Cavaliers, which again have been an irrelevant franchise despite the years they've had a guy named LeBron James on the roster, win an NBA title 2 years after he returns. And then, again, you guys know the story. He goes to Los Angeles. The first year there, they miss the postseason. He hurts his groin. It's a big disappointment. People are saying he came here to win Emmys, to make movies, be Michael B. Jordan, would be Kevin Hart, but a 6'9" version. We heard all of those things. Despite hearing all those things, 2 years later, the Los Angeles Lakers, after years and years of irrelevancy, are NBA champions. Okay, 2 years later. Again, 2 years later after going to LA, they're champions. 2 years after going to Cleveland, they're champions. 2 years after going to Miami, they're champions. There is a trend here. He literally wins, like I just said, he literally wins wherever he goes. With Dwayne Wade, he wins. With Kyrie Irving, he wins. With Anthony Davis, he wins. So three very different types of players, 3 great players, I should say, but 3 very different types of players. Doesn't matter their game plan, their style of play, he makes it work. Also, he wins with Eric Spoelstra, Ty Lue, Frank Vogel. Now, 3 different coaches, obviously 3 unproven coaches before LeBron got there, was with them, won championships with them, I'm sorry. Quite frankly, he just finds a way to win. He just wins. He averaged, 29, 12, and 8 on 59% shooting in the NBA Finals this year, okay? And 59% shooting, his career best in the NBA Finals. So you could argue some of his best numbers in his 10th NBA Finals in his 17th year. That is crazy to wrap your mind around. There is no doubt in my mind, all things considered here, there is no doubt in my mind LeBron James deserved to win it. With Anthony Davis, with his shaky performances in games 3, 4, and 6, I gotta give it to LeBron James. And quite frankly, him and the Lakers, they did exactly what they said they were going to do. As soon as they signed LeBron James, as soon as they traded for Anthony Davis, they did exactly what they said they were going to do. And as we've been hearing from them all postseason long, after going up 3-1 on Denver, after going up 2-1 on Miami, 3-1 on Miami, we kept hearing the job is not finished. Well, Los Angeles, the job is now finished. For now, at least, until next season, at least. But for now, yes, the job is finished. They got it done. We won't have NBA basketball until January at the earliest. So hopefully you guys got your servings in of NBA, of basketball. And again, we're not going to have it for months. Let's go ahead and now let the speculation, like I said at the beginning of the show, with this season coming to a close, we either have to kind of backtrack to last season or speculate and look forward to next year, to next season. So let the speculation on next year begin. Basically, again, one more time though. Props to the Los Angeles Lakers for getting the job done. Anthony Davis, Dwight Howard, KCP, Kuzma, Caruso, Frank Vogel, etc., etc. They all get their first championship. Will this group stay together next year and make another run at it? LeBron said it himself. I've got a lot of years left. I think that is a perfect segue into my next segment, and that is, can LeBron James get 6 NBA championships, win 6 rings? Like I just said, he said it himself. He's got a lot of years left. We will see. But now it's time to listen up, sports bettors. I want to tell you guys about my favorite sports book, and that is BetUS. Football, baseball, they are back and still going, and that means it's time to put down your bets while you still can. I only endorse one sports book, and that is BetUS. Why, you ask? It's because BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the business. You need a sports book with integrity, longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid. You need a sports book that offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, esports, horses, entertainment of all kinds. They have crazy prop bets and futures. Nobody in the industry gives bigger bonuses than BetUS. Go to betus.com now, fill out your information. It only takes a couple of minutes. And when you get to the How Did You Hear About Us box, type in GSMC. Again, type in GSMC to get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody beats that. I bet at BetUS, so should you. Join BetUS today, and don't forget to type in GSMC to get up to 150% on your first deposit. That's BetUS, America's sportsbook.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, guys. Like I said before the break, I want to discuss LeBron James once again. With him getting his 4th NBA championship recently, there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of talk about LeBron. Can he win 6 championships? I want to go ahead and break that down, discuss that, because again, he just got his 4th NBA title, only making him again, I say only 2 championships, like it's only 2 championships, that's a lot, but still, how far away he was, which was 3, which was, 4, he's getting closer and closer, as years go on, obviously. So with him getting his 4th, yes, there's going to be conversations about him catching, Michael Jordan in that sense. And again, I know I said it in my last segment, I'm not going to bring Michael Jordan into this sense. I'm not comparing the two in any sense necessarily. I just want to, talk about, can he reach that 6th title, which everyone, it's on the heavenly platform, 6 for 6. So can LeBron, I know he can't be 6 for 6. He's already lost, I think, his 6 titles total. So he can't go 6 for 6, but he can be 6 and 6 in the NBA Finals. So can he do that? Let's go ahead and discuss, since he's only two, but again, 2 championships away, 35 years old. Let's go ahead and break it down. Because I don't think I don't think it is crazy to think he could do it. He could win 6 titles. I know the odds. I know the odds aren't necessarily in his favor, but I don't think it's crazy to think he could do it. But again, the league is just getting healthier. Looking at next season, like I said at the beginning of the show, we're going to be speculating on next year. Looking at next season, Golden State, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, they're coming back healthy. Draymond Green seems rested. They got Andrew Wiggins. They had the lottery pick. They got a $17 million trade exception. So Golden State will be back to play next year. They will be back into contention next year. Speaking that into existence here, I should say, the LeVar Ball statement there. But either way, I think Golden State will be back as better as ever, as good as ever, competing next year. They might even be my favorite to win it all next year. Stay tuned for a segment about that. But either way, you can't argue Golden State is getting healthy. And then the Brooklyn Nets, with Kevin Durant being out all year with his Achilles injury, Kyrie being in and out of the lineup, it's no doubt that hopefully that roster in Brooklyn will, as well as Golden State, they will both be healthy, will both be competing for titles years going forward. Hopefully if everyone stays healthy, can get back at 100%. But as of right now, it's looking that way. It's looking like the Brooklyn Nets, that the Golden State Warriors will be back into contention next year. So that's making the path to a title even harder than it was this year. Teams are also continuing to improve. It's not just Golden State and Brooklyn coming out of nowhere or coming back into contention. There are teams continuing to improve, like the Miami Heat. Like we saw this year, we saw them dominate the Eastern Conference. They still have cap room, like I want to talk about at the end of the podcast today. So stay tuned for that. They still have cap room going forward. We saw what they did this past year. They have a whole lot of young players who are going to improve. So a team like Miami, they're going to improve. The Dallas Mavericks with a guy like Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis, who hopefully can stay healthy. But the jump from year 1 to year 2, Luka bringing that Dallas Maverick team into the playoffs, taking the Los Angeles Clippers to 6 games in the first round of the postseason, despite not having his second best player in Kristaps Porzingis for the majority of that series. So I think Dallas is going to do nothing but improve. They also have cap space to sign a free agent. They also have a couple of pieces perhaps to make a trade or so. Denver, we saw what Denver did this year, coming back 3-1 on the Jazz and on the Clippers. I think Denver will continue to improve. Young pieces in Jokic, Murray, Michael Porter Jr. So I think all 3 of those guys will continue to improve and develop. So Denver, Dallas, Miami, I think all 3 of those teams, if not other teams, will continue to improve and get better, as well as Golden State and Brooklyn. LeBron James will be going into his 18th season. Next year will be LeBron's 18th NBA season with an aging Laker roster besides Anthony Davis, Kuzma, Caruso, and KCP, but the biggest name besides AD, besides him, other just small pieces, quite frankly. So besides AD, as far as big pieces go, it's an aging roster. Rondo 33, Danny Green 32, Dwight Howard 34, Avery Bradley 29, going on 30. So yes, it is an aging roster in Los Angeles, and not a ton of cap room to go along with that. No draft picks to go along with that. Trying to get Anthony Davis here, not a lot of young talent going forward. So yeah, not a lot of cap room because of Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Danny Green. LeBron James going into his 18th season, an aging roster, all of those things going against his case for 6 championships. However, he does have things going for him as well. He may be 35 years old going into his 18th year, but he's still looking like what we saw in this year's postseason and regular season. He's still looking like the best player in basketball. If you remember, he was the runner-up for this year's NBA regular season MVP. I think he was snubbed, and he should have gotten much more votes than which he got. But he was the runner-up, might I remind you, for the NBA regular season MVP award. He also just won the finals MVP. I'll get to that in a second. But in the regular season, 25, 10, and 8. Again, in his 17th year, in his first year with this new roster, right? With a new head coach, 25, 10, and 8 with a new complimentary star in AD, 25, 10, and 8. In this year's postseason, 27, 9, and 11. So his stats do nothing but improve in the postseason. So 27, 9, and 11. On 56% shooting, 37 from the 3, 64 from 2-point land. So from inside that 3-point line, he shot 64% from inside the 3-point line. The best ever in NBA history. Better than Shaq, better than Jordan, better than Elijah Wan, better than Kareem, okay? All these guys who did their work inside the 3-point line. He shot a better percentage than any of them. Any of their best years, he did better in his 17th year, in his 10th NBA Finals. He shot a better percentage than all of those players in the finals. In specific, 29 points, 12 rebounds, 8.5 assists on 59% shooting. Okay, so in the regular season, he goes from 25, 10, and 8 on 49% shooting to 27, 9, and 11 on 56. And then on the biggest stage possible in the NBA Finals, he goes for 29, 12, and 8 on 59% shooting, and then wins his 4th Finals MVP in his 17th season. Okay, usually the oldest player on the court is not the best player on the court, but from what we watched in this year's postseason, that was usually the case. The oldest player on the court, which usually was LeBron James, was usually, if not always, the best player on the court. He still looked like the fastest, the smartest player out there, and for me, that is not concerning going into his 18th year. So for right now, he's still the best player as far as that is concerned. He's still the fastest, smartest player on the court. And I don't know why Anthony Davis wouldn't now sign long-term in Los Angeles. After winning his first title, seems to be clicking on all cylinders with his all-star teammate in LeBron James. I don't see any reason why Anthony Davis does not stay long-term in Los Angeles. Why wouldn't he again? And 26 years old, Anthony Davis is. This year was his longest postseason run of his career up until this point. He averaged 27, 9, and 3, a steal and a block per game. Again, his longest postseason run up until this point. Only had one postseason victory. That also tells you what pairing up with LeBron James does for you in the postseason. Only had one postseason victory up until then, series victory. Then goes on to win the title his first year with LeBron. That's neither here nor there. That's not the topic at hand here. We're talking about the Lakers, LeBron. Can they win, 2 more titles together? I don't necessarily see why they can't. Again, Anthony Davis, only 26 years old in his first postseason, 27, 9, and 3. In his first NBA Finals, 25, 11, and 3, a steal per game, 2 blocks per game. Also shot 57% from the floor, 42% from 3, 93% from the free throw line. So he shot a 50, 40, 90 clip in the NBA Finals. Okay, 50, 40, 90. We know how hard that is to accomplish throughout a regular season. He did it, that's 82 games. We know how hard it is to do it over 82 games. He did it over 6 games. But we know it's the biggest stage possible. Despite him struggling again in games 3, 5, and 6, or 3, 4, and 6, I think it was. He still averages 25, 11, and 3 on a 50, 40, 90 clip. That is insanely good in your finals debut, might I add. Insanely good. So I think it's safe to say that Anthony Davis is getting into the prime years, the real, money years of his career, and should continue to do nothing but improve his game. I think his confidence is improving. His game is obviously improving. His percentages from the free throw line are insane. His percentages from the 3-point line are doing nothing but improving. So I think he's getting even better. And with LeBron James with LeBron and his age being a concern to some people, being a factor in the in the debate against him, I should say. With Anthony Davis, stepping into that larger role, hopefully, I think that will help LA going forward eclipse, get 2 more championships together. So with LeBron's age, coming into play, being a concern for some, Anthony Davis, coming into the peak years of his career, doing nothing but improving, I should think. I think him stepping into the larger role will do nothing but help LA and LeBron's chances at getting that 6th title. So LeBron does not have to have necessarily, with Anthony Davis improving, he does not necessarily have to have so much on his plate as he continues to age and as he continues to not necessarily have maybe as much in his game. But this, again, right now watching him play, I don't think that is the story. I don't think that is coming into play whatsoever. I think he is still looking like the best player in basketball from what I've been seeing from him. He seems to be aging like a fine wine of some sorts, that like the stuff he seems to be always be drinking on his nights off after a nice victory. We see him on Instagram, on Snapchat, on Twitter, posting that nice fine glass of aged wine. So I think LeBron is aging, similar in a sense. Getting better as years go on. In year 17, I think after he won the title, they asked him, now LeBron, winning your 4th title, do you think you are better now than winning your first NBA title? And, obviously in his 17th year in comparison to what in his 2011, he won, he came in the league 04. So what? It's basically his 7th, 8th year he wins in comparison to his 17th year. It's like you think you're better in your 17th year than in your 8th, 9th year, 10th year, and he says, yes, I think I am even better now than I am back then. So that is what you want to hear for a guy like LeBron going forward. In this conversation, can he win 2 more championships? Him saying stuff like, I've got a lot of years left, saying I'm even better now than I was back then, that is doing nothing but giving me more confidence in saying yes. Okay, so do I think LeBron James can achieve at catching, the 6 championship, the 6 titles? Yes, I do. I definitely think it is possible, and I definitely would not bet against it. Do I think it's definitely going to happen and that it's a lock that you can basically book it? No, I would not say book it. He's catching he's catching MJ at 6 titles. No, I am in no way, no how saying that it is going to happen. However, I am not saying you want to bet against it. I'm not saying you want to write him off. So do I think he has a chance of catching 6 championships? Yes, I do. Again, I would not bet against LA at this point. Their front office definitely seems capable of improving the roster, putting the right pieces together, signing Anthony Davis long-term, hopefully, and that is just as key as LeBron James, his longevity, him playing at the high level. It's just as important for LA's front office to continue to improve the roster as years go on, continue to update the roster, because we know this, like I've been saying, this is an aging group, not a whole lot of young players besides Kuzma and AD, quite honestly, and Caruso, quite honestly. So an aging roster. We'll see if LA has what it takes to put the right pieces around Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I think they are capable, but again, that is just as big a piece as LeBron James and Anthony Davis being consistent. We'll see, though. I have nothing but faith in LeBron and that Laker organization. I want to go ahead and take a quick break. When I come back, I want to discuss the Los Angeles Clippers and the Houston Rockets. Both teams are looking for their next head coach. I want to weigh in and talk about who I think, which job I think is the better position. Don't go anywhere. That is coming up next.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, guys, welcome back. Like I said before the break, I want to talk about the Los Angeles Clippers and the Houston Rockets. After disappointing ends to both of their seasons, they find themselves looking for a new head coach. I know, obviously, the Clippers blowing the 3-1 lead to Denver. Rockets getting gentlemen swept by the Los Angeles Lakers despite having high hopes for that series in this year's postseason. Both teams had high hopes for this year's postseason. So both Mike D'Antoni and Doc Rivers, in their tenure with both the Rockets and the Clippers, they both fail to win the Western Conference despite having very capable rosters. And in Doc Rivers' case, he fails to make a single Western Conference final. At least Mike D'Antoni and the Rockets went to a couple of Western Conference finals. They failed to even make their first Western Conference final, let alone the NBA final. So yes, it's obvious that both Mike D'Antoni and Doc Rivers, did underachieved, I should say. That's the perfect word. They both underachieved despite having very capable rosters, to win that Western Conference. So both coaches underachieved. That creates the discussion now. What is the better job? Both jobs are wide open, as you should say. So that creates the discussion now. Which job is better? Both have all-star talent, okay? Both have capable bench players, capable benches as well. So both have all-star talent, capable bench players. Both are in big markets as well. So both are at attractive destinations, I should say, in Los Angeles and obviously in Houston. So both attractive destinations, both big markets, both have all-star talent, both have capable benches. So on paper, yeah, they both look like great, not good, great jobs. They both look like great jobs. But the biggest string that comes attached to both of these jobs, both of these rosters, expectation. Okay, there's going to be a whole lot of expectation that goes along with being the head coach of the Houston Rockets and the head coach of the Los Angeles Clippers. Let's go ahead and break down why. Let's start out with the Houston Rockets. You have two superstar talents in James Harden and in Russell Westbrook that get along. That is a tough thing to get two guys that are bought in, two guys that get along, that are arguably best friends even. So two superstar talents that get along. But however, they both have tendencies to break down in the postseason. Both James and Harden being both regular season MVPs, both have made an NBA Finals together, quite actually. They did have a guy in Kevin Durant on the roster, which is a big factor in that. Either way, they've played together before. They get along. They're both MVPs, superstar talents. However, they both have tendencies to break down in the postseason. But then you can ask, the question comes up, is that due to the game plan? Is that because of Mike D'Antoni's game plan, kind of three or die? We're going to ride or die with the 3-point shot. in prior years, at least, that was the case. So you can look at, is it because of the breakdown of the game plan, or is it because of the individual player and their efforts? Is it because of Chris Paul, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, their individual efforts, which is the biggest cause of failure ultimately? Because we know this roster has been up on Golden State, one game away from making the NBA Finals, being up 3-2 on Golden State. So they have been in position, the Rockets have, to make an NBA Finals, to win the Western Conference. We know injuries and other things have come into play, breakdown of game plans and all of that. But yes, this roster, this group of guys have been in position to win it all. And the stats, frankly, don't support either the players or the coaching. You can say, James Harden shoots terribly from the three in elimination games, and then you look at the game plan. Mike D'Antoni simply saying, keep doing what you're doing. Don't waver or change whatsoever, even though it's obvious that what you're doing is not going to translate to success. So you can look at coaching, you can look at the individual player efforts, and quite frankly, the stats don't support either argument, quite frankly. Both are to blame, definitely, in Houston. But possibly, you can look at, possibly the coach could be the missing piece. Could that be the missing piece? I'm sorry. The talent is there. They simply needs to be used correctly. The talent is there and needs to be put together and orchestrated correctly. The game plan needs to be correct. Basically, Mike D'Antoni, the three or die, we're going to ride or die. We're missing 23s in a row in the second half of a Game 7, but we're not going to change our lineup. That definitely had a factor in the failure of the Houston Rockets, quite frankly. But again, the individual efforts of James Harden and Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook now have definitely come into play as well. But again, I can look at all things looking, taking into consideration. I can definitely say that the coach could be the missing piece, because honestly, what else could be the missing piece? They have two all-stars in James Harden and Russell Westbrook. They have a capable bench in Eric Gordon, Austin Rivers. They had Clint Capella, Jeff Green. They've got players, Robert Covington. They've got players on this roster. So I don't think players' talent is the issue here. I think the game plan and putting it all together, quite frankly, is the biggest thing. Yes, you can look at the closeout performances for both Russell and James Harden, and those stats are concerning. But you can also say their game plan never wavered. They stuck to the same thing even though it was not working. So perhaps with a new coach, a different perspective, different adjustments, as you will, I think that could be the missing piece in Houston. Could a veteran coach like perhaps a Jeff Van Gundy be the guy, be the person to whip this team into shape? Because we know with players like Harden and Westbrook, what is the problem here? Is it the style of play of Westbrook and Harden? I think if you get a veteran coach of Jeff Van Gundy in there, you will sooner rather than later find out what exactly the problem is. Now, as far as the Los Angeles Clippers go, we know how talented this team is, okay? With Kawhi Leonard and Paul George joining this team that took a healthy Golden State Warrior team to 6 games in the first round of the postseason in 2018, they simply added a Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to the mix. So yes, we know how talented this team is. Kawhi Leonard, Patrick Beverley, Paul George, Lou Will, Montrezl Harrell, Marcus Morris this year, Landry Shamet, Reggie Jackson. So a super deep roster, in Los Angeles, in the Clipper organization. If this great team can stay together, or if they can tweak the roster, in their advantage, they should be able to contend for years going forward. For consecutive years, they should be able to be somewhat title favorites, despite having the breakdown they had in this year's postseason, blowing the 3-1 lead. Yeah, they choked. I'll say it one more time. Either way, with the talent they have on the roster, if they can keep them together or tweak it in their advantage, I think they should be able to to contend in years going forward. We've heard Ty Lue being in consideration. Sam Castle, I think is his name, another Clippers assistant is in consideration for the head coaching job. So there are many different guys. There are many moving pieces here. We don't have a emerging candidate. I think if anything, it's going to be Ty Lue or Sam Castle, the two candidates in the Clipper organization right now. So that's what it's looking like right now. No matter who they decide to go with, there aren't higher expectations, I think, in the NBA than this Clipper job, head coaching job, because all year, we heard they would and should, quite frankly, dominate the Western Conference and the NBA as a whole. Again, with the roster of Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Patrick Beverley, Lou Will, Montrezl Harrell, Marcus Morris, Doc Rivers as the coach. People were saying all year they would and should dominate with all of the talent. However, they come up short and choke. Okay, they choke. And could the game plan have been, a bigger issue than what we're looking at? We heard after the loss, Kawhi says, it was the game plan. We didn't have the right, we didn't have the right, mindset going into it. We heard Paul George say this wasn't a contending year for us whatsoever, which is concerning, which is things you tend to look at, that is coming from the head coach more often than not. So, was coaching a bigger factor in the loss than we are taking into consideration? Either way, you got to look at Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, their Game 7 effort in the second half. Quite frankly, neither of them scored in the fourth quarter. Neither of them had both of them, I should say, had terrible second half efforts. Paul George in specific had terrible showings ever since they went up 3-1 on Denver. He had terrible showings in games 5, 6, and 7, especially in game 7. So yes, you have to take all things into consideration, but I'm not sure what is the biggest factor there. I'm also not sure what is the better job to take, Houston or the Clippers. I am leaning, honestly, with the Clipper roster because, Kawhi Leonard is the best player out of all the players being considered. But I'm leaning with the Clippers. Either way, both seem like pretty good jobs that come with a whole lot of expectations. So we'll see what Houston decides to do. They're leaning, it seems like Jeff Van Gundy. We've heard that name a whole lot since Mike D'Antoni parted ways. For the Clippers, we've been hearing Ty Lue a whole lot. Also, they kind of want to keep it in-house. So I think more than likely that is the direction we will see them take. Either way, whoever they decide to plug in those roles, it is coming with a whole lot of expectations. We will see if they can handle those expectations going forward. I want to take my last break of the episode today. Coming back, though, I want to discuss the Miami Heat because executives are saying they just might be a hot spot for an all-star going forward. Okay, that is coming up next. Don't go anywhere.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, guys, welcome back. Like I said before the break, there's a lot of talk going on after a very impressive postseason from Miami. A lot of talk from NBA executives that Miami, the Heat, just might be a landing spot for an all-star with a, quote, wondering eye. So maybe for an all-star, not quite knowing where exactly he wants to go But, he knows Miami is a stacked team, or a stacked roster, or a deep team, I should say. Me applying my talents might just put them over the top. So that is the rumor going around right now. Miami might be the landing spot for an all-star with a, quote, wondering eye. I think that's coming from Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer, I believe. But either way, several reports stating, like I said, NBA execs believing this because of the very impressive postseason performance, and very rightfully so. I've spoken on it many times. It was such an impressive effort from Miami. And I've also spoke on this, I think, a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago it was, when Miami first made the finals, or maybe when they beat Milwaukee, I think. I'm not quite sure when it was. It was a couple of weeks ago. Either way, I talked about it. The Miami Heat, they have cap room. They have cap space enough to sign an all-star level talent, which, if you think about it, all things considered, what they did this year, what they have already on the roster, that is pretty scary when you think about it. This team, we just saw this team go 12-3 in the East to advance to an NBA Finals, which nobody saw possible. They went 12-3. Okay, 12-3, and they beat the Indiana Pacers, the Milwaukee Bucks, with the back-to-back MVP in Giannis. They beat the Boston Celtics with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart, Gordon Hayward, Brad Stevens as the coach. So they beat all of those guys despite not being favored to, again, 12-3 in the Eastern Conference. So not exactly a cakewalk either through the Eastern Conference, not necessarily in a Eastern Conference cakewalk like we've seen in prior years. No, they definitely had challenges despite the only going 12-3, only 3 losses. Don't be fooled, they definitely had their fair share of challenges. But it was also this group's first year together as a whole. That needs to be taken into consideration. This year's first group together, a lot of young players as well. A whole lot of young players. Tyler Hero was the youngest player in NBA history to play in an NBA Finals game. Was born in the year 2000 or something. Kendrick Nunn, only 24 years old. Duncan Robinson, 25 years old. All 3 of those guys, rookies. All 3 had impressive showings in this year's regular season and postseason. Also have an emerging star in Bam Adebayo. Bam, a first-time All-Star, second team All-Defense. He's getting the respect he's starting to deserve. So Bam, an emerging All-Star. They finally have a leader in Jimmy Butler, an established veteran All-Star. Again, I've said it before. I'm not sure if you can name 10 players better than Jimmy Butler in the NBA today because of what we've seen from him this past year. So again, all those things taken into consideration, this was this group's first year together. They have a whole lot of rookies, young players in Hero, Nunn, in Robinson, the young emerging star in Bam Adebayo, the veteran leader, all-star in Jimmy Butler, the veteran coach in Eric Spoelstra. Now just imagine, okay, all that put together, now just imagine this team adding perhaps a Victor Oladipo if he's at full strength. You know how scary that would be? A Victor Oladipo, a two-way guy who can go and get his own shot at times. A Victor Oladipo, or a veteran a game manager in Chris Paul, an insane IQ, can get guys in their spots, can run an offense. Imagine a guy like Chris Paul being inserted to this lineup. So imagine a Victor Oladipo, a Chris Paul, perhaps a Bradley Beal, a 30-point-a-night guy, a 5 assist, 5 rebound-a-night guy, can play on both ends of the floor. So imagine, again, a Chris Paul, Victor Oladipo, a Bradley Beal, or ultimately the biggest prize possible right now, ultimately, imagine a Giannis Antetokounmpo with shooters like Hero, Nunn, and Robinson, with an established guy like Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. Imagine Giannis in Miami. So imagine Victor, Chris Paul, Bradley Beal, Giannis. Imagine any one of those players being inserted to this young, deep team, which we just saw go 12-3 in the Eastern Conference, despite playing a Milwaukee Buck team with Giannis, a Boston team with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, again, Gordon Hayward, Marcus Smart. So all things considered, imagine that team adding an all-star caliber player, and I would not bet against one of these guys, one of those players I just named. I would not bet against them being in Miami sooner rather than later. With them having the cap space that they have, the roster that they have, the coach that they have, such an impressive effort we saw from them this year. Imagine that. Imagine them adding an all-star level talent to this roster. And like I said, quite frankly, I think it's going to be sooner rather than later. I completely agree with these NBA executives that Miami just might be a likely landing spot for an all-star with a wondering eye. Okay, that's going to be it for the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Thank you all for your continued support. Go check us out on Twitter and Facebook, both social media pages. Also, leave us a comment or review. Please leave us a comment or review on whatever platform you are listening on. With the NBA season coming to a close, let's celebrate the NBA champions a little more. The Los Angeles Lakers put a little bit more of respect on their name, and let's start speculating and looking forward to next season. I'm looking forward to doing that with you guys. I'll see you guys on Monday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.